Beneath the sterile, flat white LED panels of the high-end downtown law firm conference room, every surface gleamed with cold, impersonal perfection. The polished walnut conference table stretched long and unyielding down the center of the space, its finish so immaculate it mirrored the harsh overhead light, casting sharp, thin reflections that sliced across stacks of legal documents, leather-bound folders, and crisp white appraisal papers. The air hummed with the faint, constant drone of central air conditioning, dry and temperature-controlled, stripping away all warmth, all humanity, leaving only the quiet tension of a battle about to be waged behind closed doors. No one spoke. No one moved. The silence was thick enough to grip, heavy with unspoken accusation, years of buried resentment, and the quiet brutality of a marriage unraveling not with fiery rage, but with calculated, unfeeling precision. Every small detail of the room felt intentionally crafted to erase emotion, to reduce 7 years of shared life, love, and struggle down to nothing more than printed clauses, numerical valuations, and binding legal obligations that favored cold logic over human truth. The floor was laid with seamless light gray marble, its surface so smooth it absorbed sound entirely, muffling even the softest breath or subtle shift of movement, amplifying the oppressive stillness that hung over every person seated around the table. Floor-to-ceiling frosted glass panels lined one entire wall, diffusing the bright midday city sunlight into a flat, lifeless glow that painted every face in muted, neutral tones, erasing warmth, shadow, and individuality, turning husband and wife into nothing more than opposing parties in a sterile legal dispute. Outside the blurred glass, the endless bustle of downtown high-rises hummed on, oblivious to the quiet warfare unfolding within this closed room, oblivious to the way a lifetime of quiet devotion was being systematically dismantled word by word, number by number, signature by signature. It was Sterling Song's corporate attorney who broke the stillness, sliding a thick, glossy asset evaluation report across the table toward me with slow, deliberate movements. The man's fingers were long, immaculately groomed, devoid of any jewelry or flaw, the hands of someone who spent his life manipulating numbers, contracts, and people's futures for profit and power. His fingertip landed hard on a single bolded numerical column printed in heavy black font at the center of the page, tapping once, twice, 3 times, each sharp little click echoing loudly in the empty room, a tiny, relentless hammer strike against what remained of my 7-year marriage. The report's cover was thick, laminated cardstock in a muted charcoal gray, embossed with the law firm's minimalist silver logo at the corner, a mark of institutional authority that lent every cold, unfair claim inside an air of untouchable legitimacy. Beneath the sleek exterior lay hundreds of pages of fine print analysis, asset tallies, growth projections, and legal citations, all carefully curated to strip my life's work of its personal meaning and rebrand it as a disposable, dividable marital asset. The attorney's posture was rigid and unyielding, his shoulders squared, his head held straight, his gaze never wandering, never softening, fully committed to executing his client's ruthless agenda without a single flicker of empathy or hesitation. He had done this hundreds of times before, dismantling marriages, dividing lives, stripping people of what they had built and cherished, and to him, this case was nothing more than routine business, another file to close, another fee to earn. Another victory for a wealthy client seeking to maximize his own gain at any cost. Pursuant to the official marriage law and all applicable supplementary judicial interpretations within state civil code, the attorney intoned in a flat, uninflected professional drawl, his eyes never lifting to meet mine. Fixed rigidly on the legal verbiage before him, all net operational profits generated continuously by Ms. Seraphine Reed's luxury interior design studio Shoreline Space, from its official founding date through the entirety of the marital term, shall be legally classified as divisible marital joint property and subject to equitable court-ordered distribution in this dissolution proceeding. Every word rolled off his tongue with mechanical precision, rehearsed and sterile, lacking any recognition of the devastation those words carried for me. He did not see the late nights, the sacrificed weekends, the countless failures and rebuilds, the years of relentless grit that had built Shoreline Space from nothing but a dream and a handful of savings. He did not see the young version of me, fresh out of design school, terrified and determined, pouring every ounce of passion and energy into building something that would always be entirely my own. To him, it was simply revenue, growth, equity, numbers on a page, assets to be split, leverage to be wielded in service of his clients' greedy demands. I lowered my gaze slowly, my lashes brushing the cool skin of my cheeks as my eyes settled on that ruthless block of printed text. The words blurred for a split second, not from tears, but from a sharp, cold rush of adrenaline that drained the warmth straight from my extremities. I could feel the temperature leaching out of my palms as they rested lightly on the table's surface, the icy polish seeping upward through my nerve endings, traveling steadily toward my wrists, my forearms, sinking deep into my skeletal structure until my bones ached with a quiet, numbing frost. This was not a dispute over furniture, jewelry, or trivial marital belongings. This was a deliberate, premeditated takeover of the life I had built entirely for myself, long before Sterling Song had ever walked into my world, long before I had ever loved him, trusted him, or built a future around his promises. I could feel my heartbeat slow, steadying into a cold, calm rhythm that had become my default in the final years of our marriage, no longer racing with hope or hurt, no longer fluttering with anxiety or longing, just a quiet, resolute thrum of survival. I scanned the lines of text again and again, parsing every legal loophole, every manipulative interpretation, every carefully twisted phrase that allowed Sterling to claim ownership of a dream he had never contributed to, never supported, never truly understood. He had watched me grind for years, watched me stay up until 3 a.m. revising design boards, watched me juggle difficult clients and tight deadlines and endless operational stress, and he had said nothing, done nothing, offered nothing. Now he intended to reap half the rewards, simply because he had married me, simply because he could, simply because he thought my hard work belonged to him by right of status and marriage. Across the table, Sterling sat perfectly composed, his posture straight and disciplined, exactly as it would be during a high-stakes investor pitch or a multi-million-dollar merger negotiation. He wore the tailored cashmere Burberry sweater I had personally selected and gifted him the previous Christmas, a thoughtful, expensive present I had spent weeks researching and purchasing, hoping to bring a small measure of warmth to our increasingly frigid marriage. Back then, I had still believed in us. I had still believed that care and devotion could fix what was slowly breaking between us. Now that soft, expensive fabric clung to his broad shoulders and sharp frame, framing his cold features like a uniform worn by a man preparing to conquer and seize what was never his to take. I remembered every detail of that Christmas season vividly, the way I had wandered upscale boutiques for hours, comparing fabrics and fits, reading customer reviews, imagining him wearing it to holiday parties, imagining him feeling loved and cherished. I had wrapped the sweater in cream-colored handmade wrapping paper, tied it with silk ribbon, and tucked a handwritten note inside, pouring my quiet, lingering hope for our marriage into every word. At the time, he had smiled, thanked me briefly, and pulled me into a quick, perfunctory hug that felt more obligatory than affectionate. I had overlooked the coldness in his eyes back then, choosing to believe I was overthinking, choosing to hold on to the last fragments of the love we had once shared. Now, watching him sit there in that very sweater, using the gifts of my devotion as armor while he fought to destroy my livelihood, every small, tender memory curdled into bitter, unyielding resolve. His dark hair was styled with obsessive precision, every strand smoothed into place with product, no stray hair out of line, no hint of human imperfection. His gold-rimmed designer glasses sat perfectly centered on the bridge of his straight nose, shielding his eyes just enough to obscure any flicker of guilt, any trace of remorse, leaving only the calm, unblinking detachment of a seasoned Wall Street managing director assessing a failing asset. He looked at me not like a husband confronting the end of a 7-year partnership of love and life, but like a wealthy executive finalizing the liquidation of a low-performing subsidiary, weighing cost and benefit, calculating every possible gain with zero emotional attachment. He had always carried this meticulous, polished perfection in every aspect of his public life, his appearance, his career, his social demeanor, his curated image as the ideal successful elite man. Every detail of his existence was calculated, refined, and controlled, designed to project success, stability, and superiority to the world. He never allowed himself to look messy, vulnerable, or human, not even in private, not even with me. For years, I had mistaken that polished composure for discipline and maturity, unaware that it was actually emotional emptiness, a complete lack of genuine feeling, a total inability to value anything that could not be quantified, leveraged, or exploited for personal gain. "Seraphine," he began, his voice smooth, measured, and infuriatingly reasonable, the practiced tone of someone who had rehearsed this speech dozens of times in private. "Emotional bonds may dissolve over time, but financial accounts and legal obligations remain binding. We both understand the romantic chapter between us has closed. Even so, the books must still be balanced fairly and transparently. Your studio flourished and scaled its brand, client base, and profitability entirely during our marriage. It is only logical and legally correct that we settle these shared assets accordingly." His tone was so mild, so seemingly fair, that an outside observer might have believed he was acting with integrity, seeking only equitable resolution. But I knew better. I knew the manipulation hidden beneath his reasonable facade. He was framing his greedy seizure of my premarital business as a neutral, responsible act of financial stewardship, twisting justice to serve his own selfish agenda. He wanted me to look unreasonable if I fought back, to seem bitter and uncooperative for refusing to surrender half my life's work to a man who had given nothing in return. He wanted the world to see him as the calm, rational party, and me as the emotional, irrational one, a narrative he had spent years cultivating in our social circles, whispering quiet doubts about my work obsession and my lack of marital dedication to anyone who would listen. He lifted a plain glass tumbler of lukewarm water to his lips and took a slow, leisurely sip, his Adam's apple bobbing once in a gesture of complete ease. There was no urgency in his demeanor, no nervousness, no sorrow. He had all the time in the world to dismantle my life, because he had planned every single step long before this meeting. His words carried a subtle, condescending leniency, as if he were doing me a charitable favor by allowing me to negotiate, as if I ought to be grateful he was not taking even more. He had prepared for this divorce meticulously, gathering financial records, consulting multiple attorneys, mapping out every possible asset he could claim, strategizing every angle to ensure he emerged from the dissolution with maximum profit and minimal loss. While I had spent months grieving the death of our marriage, processing betrayal and heartbreak, trying to understand where everything had gone wrong, he had spent every spare moment plotting how to strip me of my independence, my career, my security. The contrast was staggering, and it burned itself into my consciousness, hardening every soft, forgiving part of me into unbreakable steel. My mind flashed violently back to 3 days prior, to the encrypted email alert that had popped up on my private work laptop late at night, containing the final batch of photographs from the private investigator I had reluctantly hired months earlier. I had delayed confronting the truth for so long, terrified of breaking the fragile, false peace I had clung to for years. After years of quiet suspicion, of subtle red flags I had chosen to rationalize away, I had finally mustered the courage to face the truth, terrified of what I would find but unable to keep living in ignorant bliss any longer. I had hired the investigator discreetly, paying out of my personal studio earnings, never telling a soul, not even my closest friend Nora, terrified of the shame and heartbreak that would follow if my worst fears were confirmed. I had told myself I was preparing for closure, for peace, for the ability to finally let go. What I had not anticipated was just how deliberate, how long-standing, how unapologetic Sterling's betrayal truly was. But the images had been unflinching, unforgiving, impossible to ignore. They had been captured on the glass rooftop terrace of Skyline Supper Club, the most exclusive panoramic dining venue overlooking the city's glittering financial district skyline, a place we had once dined together on our 3rd anniversary. Back when Sterling had still bothered to romance me, back when our future had felt bright and boundless. I remembered that anniversary night clearly. The soft candlelight, the expensive-tasting menu, the way he had held my hand across the table, the quiet promises he had whispered about building a lifelong life together, about growing old side by side, about supporting every dream I had. I had worn a delicate silk dress, styled my hair carefully, and spent the entire night feeling cherished and loved, convinced we were building a solid, unshakable foundation for our future. Now, years later, he had brought another woman to that exact same terrace, recreating the romantic moments we had once shared, replacing me with a younger, newer version, erasing every memory we had built with cruel, deliberate ease. In the photographs, the string lights strung across the terrace glowed soft and golden against the indigo night sky, twinkling over the skyline of skyscrapers and glittering river waters. In the center of the frame, Sterling stood with his arm wrapped tightly, possessively, around the slender waist of Lila Carter, a 22-year-old recent art school graduate and rookie model who had joined our studio's collaborative brand partnership program only months prior. Her head was tilted upward, her lips locked fervently against his, her hands curled gently into the front of his dress shirt, completely consumed by the moment. She was young, dewy-skinned, bright-eyed and unscarred, the very picture of the innocent, hopeful version of myself I had been 7 years ago, before Sterling's indifference, his lies, his endless betrayals had worn me thin. She had the same wide-eyed passion for art and design I had once possessed, the same eager willingness to trust, to love fiercely, to believe in grand promises and perfect futures. Seeing them together felt like watching Sterling steal my own youth all over again, like watching him fall in love with the naive girl I had been while discarding the stronger, wiser woman I had become. That cruel parallel had haunted me every waking hour since I'd seen those photos. He had fallen for a carbon copy of the girl I used to be, yet he had discarded the woman I had grown into, the woman who had loved him faithfully, built a stable life beside him, and sacrificed countless personal dreams to accommodate his rising career. Worse still, after stealing my youth and my devotion and replacing me with a younger model, he now intended to strip me of the career I had built with my own blood, sweat, and every penny of my premarital savings. I had put my own creative growth on hold countless times to support his career moves, adjusted my work schedule to accommodate his last-minute travel, skipped industry awards and networking events to stay home and maintain the perfect marital image he craved. I had compromised for him, adapted for him, sacrificed for him, all while he quietly searched for someone new to fill the space he had long since stopped valuing in our marriage. Shoreline Space had never been a marital joint venture. It had been my personal dream, my solo project, my lifeline. I had founded the studio at 26, fresh off years of grueling freelance work, late-night design revisions, low-paying entry projects, and endless self-study to master every aspect of residential and commercial design. I had used every dollar I had saved through years of freelance design work straight out of college, supplemented by generous, hard-earned financial support from my parents, who had scrimped and saved their entire adult lives to help me build something permanent for myself. My parents had always taught me to be independent, to build my own security, to never rely on anyone else for my happiness or livelihood. Their hard-earned savings, paired with my years of youthful grit, had laid the entire foundation of Shoreline Space, with zero input or assistance from Sterling. I had registered the business entity, filed all initial licensing paperwork, leased the first small studio space in a modest neighborhood on the outskirts of downtown, purchased all original equipment, drafting tables, design software licenses, material sampling kits, and office furniture, and cultivated the first handful of loyal clients entirely before I had ever accepted Sterling's proposal, before we had ever signed marriage documents, before we had ever moved into the riverfront penthouse together. Sterling had contributed zero capital, zero labor, Zero creative input, zero operational effort. He had never sat in on a client consultation, never reviewed a design draft, never visited a construction site, never stayed late to fix a project crisis. He had never asked how my work was going, never offered to help with administrative tasks, never celebrated my wins or comforted me through my professional failures. He had simply enjoyed the social prestige of being married to a successful designer, bragged about my studio's accolades at cocktail parties, name-dropped my business to elevate his own social standing, and now, when our marriage soured, he planned to seize half of everything I had built alone. For 7 years, he had leeched off my success passively, taking pride in my achievements without lifting a finger to support them, and now he believed he was entitled to own them outright. Joint property? I repeated the 2 quiet words under my breath, my tone soft and unassuming on the surface, yet sharp enough to slice clean through the suffocating stillness of the conference room. My voice did not shake. It did not crack or waver with emotion. After years of quiet heartbreak and gradual disillusionment, I had long since exhausted my supply of tears and hysterics. All that remained was cold, unshakable clarity and a quiet, burning resolve. I had cried enough in the lonely nights of our failing marriage, cried over missed anniversaries, cold dinners, empty beds, and unkept promises. I had grieved enough for the love that had died, for the future we had once dreamed of, for the naive hope I had clung to for far too long. There was no more sadness left in me, only a fierce, unyielding determination to protect what was mine, to defend my life's work, to refuse to be victimized by his greed any longer. I did not reach out to touch the damning appraisal report spread open before me. I refused to grant that document, or the man behind it, the dignity of my fear or my submission. Instead, I lifted my chin slowly, my gaze rising to lock steadily onto Sterling's eyes, the eyes that had once held warmth, admiration, and quiet love for me, the eyes I had once believed contained my entire future. Now I saw nothing but polished greed, calculated opportunism, and hollow, performative rationality. I searched his features for any trace of the man I had loved, any flicker of the tenderness he had once shown me, any spark of remorse for the destruction he was attempting to wreak. But there was nothing left. The man sitting across from me was a stranger, cold, ruthless, and entirely consumed by his own self-interest. "Sterling," I said clearly, enunciating every syllable with deliberate, unwavering firmness, "are you absolutely certain you want to settle every last part of our 7-year marriage this coldly, this completely, this irreversibly?" I gave him one final chance, one last opening to choose decency over greed, to choose respect over destruction, to acknowledge the years we had shared and the life I had built alone. I hoped, against all logic, that some small fragment of our old love might remain, that he might hesitate, that he might choose to walk away honorably instead of burning everything to the ground. Even after all his betrayal, a tiny, buried part of me still clung to the memory of the man he had once been, the man who had courted me, loved me, and promised me forever. This was the true end of us. There would be no dramatic screaming matches, no public scenes, no messy breakdowns or tearful reconciliations. There would be no chance to revisit old memories, no opportunity to salvage what was broken, no final plea for understanding. All that remained between husband and wife now was an impenetrable wall of legal fine print, cold contractual obligations, and the sharp, surgical blade of betrayal wielded methodically by the person who had once promised to protect me, cherish me, and build a lifelong future by my side. Love had died slowly, quietly, over years of neglect. Now it was being buried cold and sterile, under the brutal logic of asset division and financial litigation. Our marriage would not end with emotion, with closure, or with mutual forgiveness. It would end with signatures, rulings, and permanent division, every trace of our once beautiful bond erased by his greed and cruelty. My name is Seraphine Reed, and I am 33 years old. For the past 7 years, I have owned and operated Shoreline Space, a boutique high-end interior and soft furnishing design studio renowned throughout the metropolitan luxury real estate industry for bespoke residential and commercial projects. curated luxury material sourcing, and personalized artistic design direction. To the outside world, Sterling and I had been the definition of a flawless elite power couple, the golden pair of our upper-class social circle. He was a respected managing director at a top-tier global investment firm, commanding multi-million-dollar corporate transactions, closing high-profile mergers, and earning a six-figure annual bonus that placed him firmly among the city's financial elite. I was an award-winning rising star in the local design industry, my published projects featured in luxury home design magazines, my client list filled with wealthy entrepreneurs, celebrity homeowners, and high-net-worth families. We were photographed together at galas, charity events, and industry parties, our perfect smiles and polished appearances fueling the city's elite gossip circles, cementing our reputation as two equally successful, perfectly matched partners living an enviable, flawless life. We were universally regarded as perfectly matched, equally ambitious, equally accomplished, equally polished and poised, born and bred for success and status. For a long time, I had believed that illusion too. I had believed our perfect life equated to perfect happiness. I had bought into the societal narrative that wealth, status, and professional success equated to fulfillment, that a beautiful home and prestigious reputations would shield me from loneliness and heartbreak. I had spent years curating that perfect life, polishing every flaw, hiding every crack, pretending our marriage was thriving even as it crumbled silently beneath the surface. I had prioritized our public image over my own peace, over my own happiness, over the genuine connection every marriage needs to survive. In the first 2 years of our marriage, the gloss on our life had held steady, bright, and untarnished. Sterling had been absorbed in his rapid career ascent, working endless overtime hours, traveling coast to coast for client meetings and deal closings, building his professional reputation and stacking his wealth incrementally. I had been equally consumed with nurturing my fledgling studio, refining my design aesthetic, building my team, and proving my credibility in a competitive, male-dominated creative industry. We had lived in our sprawling 2,800-square-foot riverfront penthouse, a modern luxury high-rise residence with floor-to-ceiling glass windows that framed unobstructed panoramic views of the glittering downtown skyline and the winding river glittering under sunlight and city lights alike. In those early days, we had still found small moments of joy together, lazy Sunday mornings drinking coffee on the balcony, quick weeknight dinners after long workdays, quiet conversations before bed about our goals and dreams for the future. We had been busy, yes, but we had still chosen each other, still prioritized our bond, still cherished the new life we had built together. Every corner of that home had been hand-designed and personally curated by me, every fabric swatch, every furniture piece, every lighting fixture and decorative accent chosen with careful intention. I had spent months planning the penthouse's layout, selecting custom materials, coordinating contractors, and refining every small detail to create a warm, elegant sanctuary for us to share. Back then, walking through those polished marble hallways and sunlit open-concept living spaces had felt like walking through a dream I had built for myself and for the love of my life. Every sunset spilling over the water, every nighttime skyline glow reflecting off the glass walls, had felt like a blessing, a reward for our hard work and our shared ambition. Our life had felt gilded, privileged, endlessly promising. I had believed that this beautiful home, this successful life, would be the permanent foundation of our lifelong happiness. But gold plating always wears thin with time, and perfect facades always crack when left unmaintained. Slowly, insidiously, the warmth seeped out of our marriage. Sterling began coming home later and later each night, his excuses growing thinner and more repetitive by the week. Last-minute client dinners, emergency deal negotiations, overnight corporate travel, impromptu team strategy sessions. I would stay up waiting for him, brewing fresh tea, leaving the entryway light on, clinging to the last remnants of wifely devotion, only to be greeted by the faint, unfamiliar scent of foreign perfume clinging to his tailored suit collars. A different subtle fragrance every few weeks, each one proof of his wandering attention, his wandering hands, his wandering heart. At first, I had rationalized the sense as accidental, colleagues at events, crowded networking parties, innocent proximity. I had chosen to trust him, to ignore the quiet alarm bells ringing in the back of my mind, to protect the perfect life we had built rather than face the ugly truth creeping into our marriage. Genuine communication evaporated entirely. The gentle daily conversations we once shared over morning coffee or late-night wine faded into awkward silence. We stopped asking each other about our days, stopped sharing our stresses and successes, stopped dreaming together or planning for our future. Attempts to discuss our growing distance devolved into petty, circular arguments, each of us defensive and hurt, neither of us willing to yield or compromise. I would bring up our lack of connection, our missed time together, our fading bond, and he would deflect, turning the conversation back to my busy schedule, my studio demands, my supposed lack of availability. Arguments eventually stopped altogether, burning out into a bitter, hollow Cold War that settled permanently over our household. We lived under the same roof, slept in the same bed, shared the same legal address and social reputation, yet we were complete strangers, coexisting in quiet, lonely parallel, occupying the same space, but never the same life. I still remembered our 5th wedding anniversary with aching, crystal clarity. I had cleared my entire schedule for the day, paused ongoing project work, and spent hours preparing a gourmet home-cooked dinner, crafting every dish to match Sterling's favorite flavors, arranging crystal glassware, fresh floral centerpieces, and candlelight across our formal dining table. I had selected his favorite red wine, polished every piece of silverware, and arranged soft instrumental music to play in the background, curating every detail to create a romantic, intimate evening designed to reignite our lost connection. I had dressed carefully, worn the silk dress he had once complimented, styled my hair and applied subtle makeup, and waited patiently, hopeful that I could rekindle the quiet warmth we had lost, that I could remind him of the love we once shared. I had clung to the belief that intentional effort could fix us, that if I loved harder, tried more, and cared deeper, our marriage could return to the happy, loving partnership it had once been. When Sterling finally arrived home long after midnight, exhausted and detached, he barely glanced at the elaborate spread I had spent my entire day creating. The melted candle wax, the wilting floral arrangements, the perfectly plated cold dishes, the untouched wine, none of it registered with him. He did not smile, did not thank me, did not sit down to share a meal with me. He simply flicked his eyes over the candlelit table with undisguised boredom and mild irritation, shrugged his shoulders, and dismissed my efforts entirely with a single cruel sentence that had hollowed out my chest in an instant. In that single moment, every ounce of hope I had been clinging to shattered completely, leaving nothing but cold, empty resignation in its wake. Stop wasting your time on these pointless, sentimental gestures. They serve no real purpose for either of us. In that moment, I had felt a quiet, internal death. I had realized that my love, my care, my devotion, my endless attempts to fix us were nothing but trivial annoyances to him, meaningless distractions from his career and his selfish desires. That was the first night I truly understood that our marriage was already over, long before any formal separation or legal proceeding, long before any explicit affair had come to light. I had spent years pouring my heart into a relationship that he had long since stopped valuing, devoting myself to a man who saw my love as a burden, my effort as a waste of time, my devotion as insignificant and disposable. I had grieved silently that night, sitting alone at the candlelit table, eating cold food by myself, understanding for the first time that I was married in name only, living a life of complete emotional solitude. The final, irreversible breaking point arrived on a frigid winter evening the year prior, when I cut a regional business trip 2 days short to return home early, hoping to surprise Sterling and salvage some small piece of our fractured connection. I had been traveling for a major residential design project, working long days meeting contractors, reviewing material samples, and coordinating on-site renovations, and I had found myself missing our home, missing the quiet comfort of being together. I had thought an early return might be a pleasant surprise, a chance for us to spend unplanned time together, to reset our frayed bond. The weather outside was bitter and gray, cold wind whipping through the city streets, winter frost frosting the window panes of every high-rise building. Snow flurries drifted through the air, settling lightly on the sidewalks and rooftops, painting the city in muted white and gray. I dragged my rolling suitcase through the building lobby, my fingers numb from the cold, eager to get inside the warm penthouse, ride the private elevator up to our penthouse floor, and insert my key into the lock with a quiet, tentative hope lingering faintly in my chest. The second I pushed open the front door, all hope died instantly. Right there in the center of our marble entry foyer, positioned neatly beside my own designer loafers and leather boots, sat a pair of sleek, glossy black Jimmy Choo stiletto heels. They were delicate, feminine, brand new, entirely unfamiliar, a size far smaller than my own shoe size, unmistakably belonging to another woman. My breath caught sharply in my throat, my entire body freezing mid-step, every muscle locking tight as my brain processed the damning sight. The shoes were elegant, expensive, and utterly out of place in my marital home, a silent, unmistakable marker of intrusion, betrayal, and violation. My eyes fixed on them, unblinking, as my mind raced to process the impossible truth unfolding before me. From down the carpeted hallway, through the partially ajar master bathroom door, I heard the distinct sound of running shower water, accompanied by soft, breathless feminine laughter and quiet, intimate murmurs that sent a violent shiver of revulsion and heartbreak racing down my spine. The sounds were faint but unmistakable, echoing through the silent penthouse, reverberating inside my skull like a brutal alarm, confirming every terrible suspicion I had spent months trying to suppress. Every late night, every vague excuse, every unfamiliar scent, every distant moment of coldness and detachment suddenly clicked into place, forming a complete, devastating picture of the betrayal I had refused to acknowledge for so long. In that devastating moment, I did not scream. I did not rush down the hallway to throw open the door and confront the cheating couple hiding in my marital bathroom. I did not cry out in anger or grief. I did not create a scene. Years of quiet disappointment and gradual emotional detachment had prepared me for this final blow, numbing my instinct to lash out or break down. I simply stood motionless in the entryway for a long, endless minute, my eyes fixed blankly on those foreign heels, my heart splitting open silently inside my chest with no external sound or fanfare. There was no shock left, no overwhelming pain, only a cold, hollow emptiness that spread through every part of my body, erasing every last trace of love, hope, and longing I had ever held for Sterling. After the longest minute of my life, I slowly stepped back outside into the cold hallway, gently closed the front door of my home behind me, and locked it quietly. That single soft click of the closing door sealed away every last dream, every last fantasy, every last fragile hope I had clung to for our marriage. It separated me permanently from the life I had known, the love I had cherished, and the naive version of myself that had believed in Sterling's loyalty and devotion. I stood in the frosty hallway for several long minutes, staring blankly at the closed door, feeling the winter chill seep into my bones, matching the coldness that had settled permanently in my heart. I did not move, did not cry, did not react. I simply existed in that moment of final, irreversible loss. When I finally confronted him about the infidelity days later, after I had processed the heartbreak and steeled myself for the inevitable end, Sterling's initial panic lasted no more than 3 fleeting minutes. For a brief moment, I saw genuine shock, guilt, and fear flash across his sharp features, the fear of losing his perfect social status, his perfect marital image, his carefully curated elite life. But that flicker of humanity vanished almost instantly, snuffed out by his instinct for self-preservation and rationalization. He did not apologize sincerely, did not beg for forgiveness, did not express remorse for hurting me. His only concern was the damage his betrayal might inflict on his reputation and his career. He removed his gold-rimmed glasses with slow, deliberate precision, pulled a soft suede cleaning cloth from his suit pocket, and polished the lenses methodically, buying himself time to compose his calculated response. Every movement was deliberate, controlled, a stalling tactic to craft the perfect defense that would shift blame away from himself. When he finally spoke, all remorse was gone, replaced entirely by the cold, clinical logic of a man trained to shift blame and mitigate liability. He spoke like a lawyer defending a losing case, not a husband confessing to unforgivable betrayal. "Seraphine, let's approach this rationally and maturely. As adults," he said flatly, his tone calm and unapologetic, almost condescending. "Marital breakdowns are never one-sided failures. You devote nearly every waking hour to your design studio, prioritizing your clients, your projects, and your business growth above our household and our relationship. You rarely make time for us, rarely prioritize my emotional needs or our marital bond. If I sought connection elsewhere, it was only because this marriage stopped fulfilling me long ago." His words were a masterclass in manipulation, twisting my greatest strength into a flaw, turning my hard work and independence into the justification for his unforgivable betrayal. He refused to take any responsibility for his own choices, his own greed, his own lack of self-control, choosing instead to blame me for his failures as a husband and a man. I stood there listening in stunned, cold disbelief as he twisted his own blatant adultery into a consequence of my career dedication. He framed his selfish betrayal as a reasonable reaction to my supposed neglect, rewriting the entire narrative of our failing marriage to paint himself as the wronged, lonely party. In his eyes, my hard-won success, my lifelong passion, my independent career were not strengths to be admired. They were flaws to be weaponized against me. He had spent years benefiting from my success, proud to call me his wife and showcase my achievements to the world, but the moment our marriage faltered, he turned those very achievements into a weapon to justify his cruelty. It was in that moment, watching him twist truth into lies with effortless, practiced ease, that I officially surrendered every last ounce of love I had left for him. I looked him straight in the eye and spoke two simple, final words: "I want a divorce." There was no hesitation, no tremor, no regret. The love I had nurtured for 7 long years died completely in that instant, burned away by his shameless manipulation and unrepentant greed. Sterling fell silent for several long, heavy seconds, his sharp eyes studying my face intently, searching for any sign of weakness, any hint that I might back down or reconsider. He had always seen me as gentle, forgiving, and willing to compromise, always assuming I would prioritize our marriage over my own pain. When he realized my resolve was unshakable, that I would no longer tolerate his lies and betrayal, he nodded once, sharply and indifferently, as if agreeing to a minor contractual adjustment rather than the dissolution of our 7-year marriage. His lack of emotion was more devastating than any argument or apology could have been. "Very well," he replied coolly. "If divorce is what you insist upon, we will proceed. But we will settle every financial detail completely, fairly, and without sentiment. No loose ends, no unresolved claims." From that moment forward, there was no longer any pretense of love, connection, or mutual respect between us. The marriage was reduced entirely to a financial transaction, a business partnership to be dissolved, every emotional bond discarded in favor of cold, calculated financial gain. I had foolishly clung to a tiny shred of hope that even with our love dead, we could part ways with basic dignity and respect. I had believed we could acknowledge the years we had spent building a life together, honor that shared history with a clean, amicable separation, and walk away peacefully. I had assumed that even greedy, unfaithful men possessed a baseline of decency. I could not have been more wrong. He had no interest in dignity, no respect for our shared history, no desire for peaceful closure. His only goal was to extract maximum profit from the end of our marriage, to take as much from me as he possibly could. The moment his legal team presented their exhaustive asset division list, flagging my premarital independent studio as eligible for marital split, I understood the horrifying truth of how he had viewed me all along. I was never his partner, never his companion, never his beloved wife. I was merely a high-value personal asset he had acquired during his upward social climb, a profitable business venture with appreciating equity, a resource to be exploited and liquidated the second it ceased serving his personal needs. Every kind word, every romantic gesture, every promise of forever had been a calculated performance, designed to secure him a successful, high-status wife whose career and reputation could elevate his own standing and enrich his wealth. Our first formal divorce negotiation ended in total deadlock. I left the law firm office carrying the oppressive appraisal report like a weight bolted to my chest, driving back to the vast, empty riverfront penthouse that now felt less like a home and more like a sterile luxury show home, beautiful, immaculately decorated, perfectly staged, and completely devoid of warmth, joy, or love. The high ceilings and wide open spaces amplified my loneliness, every custom furniture piece and curated decor item a hollow reminder of the fake perfect life we had displayed for society. I wandered through the empty room slowly, running my fingers over the custom cabinetry, the polished stone countertops, the hand-selected artwork, remembering the hope I had once held for this home, for our future, for us. Every beautiful detail I had crafted now felt like a cruel reminder of how thoroughly I had been deceived. A few days later, Sterling returned to the penthouse alone to collect his remaining personal belongings. He deliberately softened his tone and relaxed his rigid posture, adopting a faux gentle, reasonable demeanor designed to manipulate me into surrendering my rights. He leaned casually against the kitchen counter, his expression warm and conciliatory on the surface, though I could see the cold calculation lingering beneath his practiced mask. He was attempting to lull me into complacency, to make me believe he was being fair and reasonable, to trick me into giving up what was rightfully mine without a fight. Seraphine, I have always acknowledged how hard you've worked for Shoreline Space, he began smoothly, his voice tailored to sound compassionate and fair. I know you built it entirely through your own grit and creativity. I have never disputed that. But legally speaking, all business growth, revenue generation, and asset appreciation occurring during our marital term qualifies as joint marital property. I am not trying to ruin you or strip you of your life's work. I am offering you two reasonable, equitable resolutions. His words were a blatant lie. He knew exactly what he was doing. He knew he was attempting to steal my premarital livelihood, to punish me for choosing to leave him, to ensure I suffered financial ruin for daring to walk away from his control. He paused, lifting one hand to tick off his terms with deliberate slowness, laying out his ultimatum plainly for me to digest, speaking as though he was granting me a generous favor rather than issuing a ruthless demand. First option, we conduct a full professional business valuation of Shoreline Space. You retain full operational ownership, and I withdraw from all future business involvement, but I receive 50% of the total appraised value as my marital share. Second option, you keep 100% of your studio in its entirety, no financial payout required for the business, but you compensate me for my legal share of the penthouse real estate equity. Both options were designed to benefit him exclusively, to ensure he profited handsomely from my hard work and sacrifice no matter what choice I made. There was no fairness, no equity, no compassion in either offer, only unbridled greed. A faint, mocking glint flickered in his eyes as he delivered his unspoken threat, his tone sharpening subtly with quiet arrogance. He knew I was trapped, or at least he thought I was. He believed he had me cornered, that my fear of losing my studio and my reputation would force me to submit to his demands. Of course, you retain the right to contest this in civil court. But you are fully aware of how protracted, expensive, and disruptive litigation can be. A full forensic audit of your studio's finances, public court proceedings, months of ongoing legal back and forth, industry scrutiny, and ongoing operational delays. Your boutique design studio, which relies entirely on client trust, reputation, and timely project delivery, cannot sustain that level of long-term turmoil and public uncertainty. You can choose to fight, but you will lose far more than you gain. His threat was clear and unmistakable: fight him, and he would destroy everything I had built. Surrender to his demands, and I might retain a fraction of my life's work. It was unvarnished, shameless coercion. He knew my every vulnerability. He knew Shoreline Space was not merely a business entity to me, it was my identity, my legacy, my life's purpose, the culmination of every sacrifice I had made over nearly a decade. He knew I would never subject my team, my clients, or my hard-earned reputation to the chaos of a years-long public legal battle. He gambled entirely on my fear of losing everything I had built. He thought my love for my studio was my greatest weakness, a lever he could pull to break my resolve and force my submission. I stood silent before him, my gaze drifting back to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering nighttime river skyline. The city lights shimmered brilliantly across the dark water, bright and dazzling for every stranger passing by, yet for me, every luminous glow only amplified the bone-deep cold settling over my heart and soul. In that moment, I felt nothing but quiet, unyielding resolve. Fear no longer lived in me. Only fight remained. I had lost enough, lost love, lost hope, lost trust, lost years of my youth. I would not lose my career, my independence, my legacy too. The pressure escalated rapidly from every conceivable angle in the days that followed, a coordinated campaign of psychological and professional sabotage carefully orchestrated to break my spirit and force my surrender. Sterling was not content to merely fight me in court. He intended to break me completely, to destroy my reputation, my career, and my peace until I had no choice but to yield to his demands. First came the relentless emotional harassment from Sterling's mother, a proud, rigid woman who had always viewed our marriage as a prestigious social achievement for her family and cared far more about public reputation than basic human decency. She had always viewed me as a suitable trophy wife for her son, grateful for my status and success, but never truly valuing me as a person. She called me repeatedly, at all hours of the day and night, her tone shifting dramatically from tearful pleading to sharp, accusatory lecturing within the span of every conversation. She would call early in the morning, disrupting my workdays, and late at night, robbing me of sleep, determined to wear me down with her endless demands and manipulation. At first, she would sob dramatically about her family's decades of hard work and sacrifice, about Sterling's stressful career pressures, framing his infidelity as an understandable product of professional burnout. Then she would turn her blame entirely onto me, criticizing my independence, my career focus, my refusal to play the docile, compliant wife she had expected. She refused to hold her son accountable for his choices, choosing instead to blame me for his failures, insisting that a good wife would have kept her husband faithful and happy. Successful men face endless temptation in the professional world, she would snap harshly, her voice shrill with entitlement. Every high-powered businessman has minor indiscretions. This is normal, expected behavior. You are being unreasonably petty and stubborn by dragging this into the public eye and destroying my son's future. You will ruin both your reputations over a trivial marital mistake. Why cannot you simply forgive and move on? Her words were the epitome of toxic elite entitlement, excusing her son's unforgivable betrayal as a trivial, normal mistake while condemning my choice to seek justice as petty and destructive. She cared nothing for my pain, my betrayal, my loss, only for her family's social standing and her son's privileged life. But her cruel, manipulative words were insignificant compared to the professional warfare Sterling unleashed against my livelihood. 6 months of careful client negotiation, countless design revisions, site consultations, and personalized creative planning for a landmark luxury private residence project came crashing down overnight. The project had been the largest commission my studio had ever secured, a sprawling custom luxury home for a high-net-worth client, a project that would have elevated my studio's industry status exponentially. I had poured months of creative energy and strategic planning into the design, collaborating with architects, contractors, and material suppliers to craft a one-of-a-kind residential space tailored to the client's vision. The high-net-worth client formally terminated our contractual agreement with a generic, vague notice citing creative direction misalignment, a prefabricated excuse with no tangible basis in our finalized design plans. After discreet, careful inquiry through trusted industry connections, I uncovered the truth. The client was a longtime college classmate and close personal friend of Sterling's, someone deeply embedded in his elite social and professional network. Sterling had personally contacted him, spreading targeted, damaging rumors throughout the local luxury design and real estate industry, claiming I was unraveling under severe marital stress, emotionally unstable, mentally distracted, and completely incapable of delivering high-quality, consistent professional results for high-end clients. He had lied deliberately to destroy my credibility, weaponizing his social connections to sabotage my career and strip me of my livelihood. The whisper campaign spread like wildfire through tight-knit elite circles. Within 72 hours, 2 additional high-value prospective clients formally suspended ongoing negotiations and withdrew their upcoming project commissions. The atmosphere inside Shoreline Space turned thick, tense, and suffocating. My small, dedicated team of designers and project managers moved through the studio with quiet apprehension, their eyes filled with unspoken worry and sympathy, uncertain if our years of hard-earned success would collapse overnight under external pressure. I watched my loyal team grow anxious and uncertain, their hard work and dedication threatened by Sterling's petty, vengeful sabotage, and my resolve hardened further. I would not let him destroy the business I had built, not after everything we had all sacrificed to make it thrive. I sat alone in my private office one evening, staring numbly at the half-completed design proposals frozen on my computer screen, custom spatial layouts, material boards, lighting schemes, and furniture renderings for projects that would never be realized, dreams that had been killed by petty, vengeful malice. And then I laughed, a quiet, breathless, bitter sound echoing through the empty room. I laughed at my own years of naive devotion, at my foolish belief that kindness and loyalty would be reciprocated. I laughed at Sterling's arrogant stupidity, his blind certainty that he knew my weaknesses. He had thought breaking my career would break me, that stripping me of my professional success would leave me desperate and compliant, willing to surrender to his every demand. He had thought my studio was my fragile breaking point, my greatest vulnerability, the lever he could pull to bend me to his will. But he had been catastrophically wrong. The studio was not my weakness. It was my strength. It was the proof of my independence, my resilience, my ability to build a thriving, meaningful life entirely on my own merit, without any reliance on his wealth, status, or support. By attacking my career, he had not broken me, he had hardened me, sharpened my resolve, and eliminated every last trace of hesitation in my heart. I no longer feared loss, no longer feared ruin, no longer feared the fight ahead. I was ready to defend myself, my team, and my legacy with everything I had. I refused to panic. I refused to beg for mercy. I refused to compromise or surrender an inch of what was mine. The next morning, I took decisive action, booking an immediate formal consultation with Genevieve Hart, the most formidable, highly respected family law attorney specializing in high-net-worth complex divorce litigation in the entire metropolitan region. Genevieve was legendary within legal circles for her razor-sharp strategic mind, uncompromising courtroom advocacy, and unparalleled success in defending independent professional women against wealthy, powerful spouses attempting asset exploitation and marital fraud. She had built her career protecting women like me, women who had built their own success, only to be targeted and exploited by privileged, greedy spouses seeking to steal their hard-earned achievements. Genevieve's law office was sleek, minimalist, and impeccably professional, designed to project quiet authority and unshakable confidence. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined the walls, filled with bound legal volumes and case precedents, while floor-glass windows overlooked the downtown skyline. Soft, neutral lighting and clean, uncluttered decor created an atmosphere of calm, focused precision, a space dedicated entirely to strategy and justice. I spread my exhaustive collection of evidence across her polished conference table, laying out every document I had compiled through months of quiet preparation, complete premarital capital investment records verifying my sole founding funding, years of independent studio financial ledgers proving zero marital financial contribution, bank statements documenting Sterling's unexplained extravagant discretionary spending, and the full cache of private investigator photographs capturing his affair with Lila Carter. Every piece of evidence was organized, dated, and verified, a comprehensive paper trail proving my case and exposing his deception. Genevieve reviewed every piece of material with meticulous, methodical focus, her sharp gray eyes scanning each page rapidly, her expression calm, analytical, and entirely unemotional. She did not react with shock or sympathy, simply processed every detail with the disciplined precision of a top-tier legal expert. When she finished her review, she folded her hands atop the table and fixed me with a steady, authoritative gaze, her expression confident and unwavering. "Ms. Reed, your core legal position is exceptionally strong," she stated firmly, her tone confident and assured. "We have clear, irrefutable proof that Shoreline Space is your sole premarital separate property, founded, funded, and independently operated entirely without spousal contribution. Our primary objectives are straightforward: secure full exclusive ownership of your studio, completely sever its connection to marital asset division, trace and recover all hidden or unlawfully transferred marital assets belonging to your spouse, and pursue maximum fault-based compensation for his proven adultery and deliberate professional sabotage." Her clear, decisive plan gave me a sense of calm I had not felt in months. For the first time since this nightmare began, I knew I had a powerful, capable advocate fighting alongside me. She leaned forward slightly, her tone sharpening with strategic precision as she outlined our critical legal challenges and countermeasures, laying out every potential obstacle and every solution we would deploy to overcome it. "Our only vulnerabilities are twofold. First, opposing counsel will attempt to argue that studio revenue growth during marriage constitutes divisible marital appreciation, despite zero spousal labor or capital input. Second, your spouse is actively leveraging his social and professional influence to damage your industry reputation and force your capitulation through economic pressure. Most critically, photographic evidence of adultery alone is insufficient for maximum fault compensation. We require verifiable proof that he expended marital joint funds to support his extramarital relationship, establishing financial exploitation and deliberate marital fraud." Her assessment was precise, thorough, and unflinchingly honest, highlighting exactly what we needed to secure a complete, decisive victory in court. The second her final sentence landed in the quiet room, my phone vibrated once on the table beside me, a quiet incoming social media request lighting up the screen. I glanced down to see a completely black profile picture, no imagery, no aesthetic detail, paired with a short, cryptic handwritten note: "I know everything about Sterling and Lila. I have proof you need to see." The timing was uncanny, almost surreal, a stroke of fate that would shift the entire trajectory of my case and turn our strong legal position into an